Right now, state lawmakers are considering legislation that will expand iGaming in the state. That means in addition to sports betting, the proposals would allow for online casinos for games like slots and cards and craps. Ohio stands to bring in millions in tax revenue with this, but some agencies are worried that it will increase the number of gambling addicts. Derek Longmeier is executive director of the Problem Gambling Network of Ohio, and he joins us here now. You know, this bill is in the House right now, and a bill in the Senate is also in the works, and they're both being included in the state budget plan, which could be decided on as early as tomorrow. So we'll see what lawmakers want to do. But off the bat, are you concerned with this moving so quickly that this could be incorporated into gambling in Ohio?
This is certainly a concern of ours, and we still don't know what the full impact of sports betting has been. And we've only had legalized sports betting for a little over 2 years. And then to have another huge expansion of gambling certainly brings concern.
What would you rather see in the legislature do instead of, maybe implementing this now when it comes to expanding the gambling? I know they're also looking at tax revenue. Different sports arenas want money. They have their hands out for new stadiums. But, when you look at this issue with zooming out, what do you think should happen first?
Well, we know the cost of harm, whether you're talking about alcohol, tobacco, marijuana, or gambling, the community impact is always greater than the economic tax benefit. So first, wanting to ensure that lawmakers know that. And then from there, really doing the research to figure out what is the impact on legalized sports betting. We don't have any data that supports that within Ohio yet. What has been the impact on e-bingo or bingo slot machines? We don't have that data. So really doing the homework there to see what the impact of current gambling expansion has looked like before we then look to expand even further with online casinos.
And while you probably don't have the solid evidence and like you said, you're waiting on the research, is there any initial studies or feedback that you're already getting and fielding in terms of the impact that this is having on Ohioans?
Well, the data sources that we look at are limited, but are helpful. So we know that in the first year of legalized sports betting, calls the Ohio Problem Gambling Helpline increased by 55%. We also saw a 67% increase to those searching online for gambling help. And we also know that participation in the statewide Time Out Ohio program, which is our statewide volunteer exclusion program, has also increased. So we know that more individuals are reaching out for help. And again, that's for the legalized forms of gambling. Who only knows what additional expansion will entail.
And how many Ohioans would you say are considered high risk when it comes to gambling?
1 in 5 Ohioans are at risk for developing a gambling problem, and that was based on the 22 survey before sports betting was legalized, and that relates to about 1.8 million Ohioans. So this is a huge issue that's impacting every Ohio community, and it's important for watchers to be aware of that.
Are there other states that have done this before or implemented this as quickly as the sports betting? What have you seen in other examples?
Well, there was a lot of focus on other states like Michigan and New Jersey. And as we look to their states and their support infrastructures, they're not nearly as far along as we are in Ohio. And always want to make sure that we recognize the place that we have as industry leaders within the state and recognize that while there may be interest in further expanding gambling within the state, we need to do our due diligence and really recognize what that impact is going to be.
And Derek, real quick, if someone knows someone or has a loved one that's dealing with gambling addiction, they just got into this and they're kind of out of control, how do they reach out and find some help locally?
The easiest way to reach out and get help is to call the Ohio Problem Gambling Helpline. That number is 800-589-9966. And we also have a corresponding website, gamblinghelpohio.org. Resources are available for individual counseling, group counseling, self-help groups like Gamblers Anonymous, financial support. There's a lot of resources available because we know the path to recovery looks different for everyone.
All right, Derek, thank you so much for joining me.